I just got done testing out 6 different magazine extensions. There's some insanity involved, some frustration. Ultimately, I came up with my favorite. I'm gonna tell you maybe why you care, what the purpose of magazine extensions for anyways. Duh, you probably know, but we'll talk and more. Stick around. Guys, let's talk real quick about magazine extensions. Why the heck you would bother, what's the point, why I got started on this. First, if you want to shoot more before you reload, then a magazine extension makes sense. Now, as has been pointed out to me, you can buy a magazine cheaper than most of the magazine extensions that I'm reviewing. Most magazines without any sort of discount, usually about $30, $31 right now for Glocks. Most of these mag extensions are $39 to much more. So for price, obviously just buy another magazine. But understand this, guys, reloading apparently will get you killed in the streets. When I posted a video of me doing reloads, that was what I was told, like I said. So maybe 5 extra rounds on board isn't a bad thing. If I back up, what got started this whole endeavor was Josh, who suggested, hey, Jay, why don't you try a Milspin magazine extension and see what you think. So I did a video of that. I'll link to it in the description. But of course, as soon as you talk about one magazine extension, then all the other people come out of the woodwork and go, well, what about this magazine extension and that magazine extension? And oh, my friend Billy Bob makes a mag extension, and before you know it, I have 6 different magazine extensions and I'm trying them all extensively. So thanks, Josh, I appreciate you. Anyway, I tested all these out. I did a bunch of drops, did a bunch of different things, and I will talk about them in alphabetical order. When I'm done talking about them, I'm gonna share with you my favorite, which probably during the descriptions you will doubtless be able to figure out, but I'll try and save it for the end. We'll see if you can figure out my bias ahead of time. First, the Agency Arms magazine extension. Guys, this one looks really nice. Like, it's obviously very nicely machined. The guys from Agency do a really good job of putting it together. It is the lightest of all of the +5s that I've tested. But understand, guys, that this is the only one that came apart on me, and then I sent it back, and then it came apart on me again after being assured that it was okay. Now, when I say came apart, I mean like I'm dropping magazines that are full or partially loaded, because that's the hardest that they're gonna get beat up. Like light magazines can get thrown around, usually don't cause any issue. It's when they're full of ammunition that I expect goofy things to happen. And in this case it did. Now, if all you do is drop partial magazines, then there's probably no issue. By the way, guys, this is what it looks like in the gun, if you can see it there. It looks really nice, has good gripping surface if you need to rip this out of the gun. The other hit that I'll mention is the post on the back is threaded all the way up, and so this could, I guess, if things get on it, it could scratch it or tear it up. I haven't seen anything like that in my testing, but I don't love the exposed threads. It's just, you know, for something of this price, this supposed level of quality, because Agency, most of their stuff, man, is really nice. I would just expect a little bit better. So that's the Agency Arms one. Next, the Glock OEM. The OG of magazine extensions. Guys, this came about before any other magazine extension. I think the first one I ever got, I'm dating myself, but we're talking like in the 90s, I had a magazine extension for a Glock. The upside, cheap. Another upside, it is durable, readily available, and the lightest. It's even lighter than all the others. Now, it only gives you +2, and that's a downside. The second downside is that if you don't replace the spring, like, you're not going to get good performance out of these. You're gonna need to get a Wolf plus 10% spring to make this thing behave, guys. So, cheap, but there are some considerations. If you don't want to have a huge tumor hanging out of the back of your gun and you just want a couple extra rounds, guys, it's not a bad choice. I don't hate these. They just don't give you as much as the others. The Milspin. Guys, this is the one that it all started with Josh saying, hey, why don't you try out a Milspin? American manufactured, veteran owned company, durable. I dropped the crap out of this thing. I don't know if you can see, but there's like little scuffs all around the bottom edge. So this one's put up with a lot of abuse. No issues whatsoever. Not the cheapest. The retention device in the back is a nice little screw, and unlike the agency, it is flush and there's no exposed threads. So it's a very clean looking piece of equipment. The company makes some goofy stuff. You know, their magazine extensions are nice, but they make like a window breaker magazine base plate, which I find suspect at best. A bunch of different back plates for slides. Guys, they're machinists. They make machine stuff and then they sell it. And I assume that there's a market for these things and they're making money. So God love them. Definitely not the cheap one either though. So decent one. The Shield Arms magazine extension. The Shield Arms magazine extension. For those of you who have heard of Shield Arms before, you're probably aware of their magazines that they make for the Glock 43X, the Glock 43, and the Glock 48 that give you additional capacity. I don't have any experience with those magazines, so I can't really comment on them in terms of reliability or functionality. But in addition to that, they make magazine base plates or extensions for Glock magazines, some others as well when I was looking at their website. This is about the same weight as all the others. It's not the lightest, not the heaviest. It's got a decent gripping surface. It is more mechanically complicated, guys, because there's an outer extension and then the base plate of the extension will come out as well. Despite that complication, it makes it the easiest to install because if you take it all apart, put the outer piece on, then slide the spring in and then put the base plate in, super easy. It's also obviously the easiest to take back apart if you need to swap springs. Guys, sooner or later every spring wears out. If you're shooting a lot with these magazines, whether original or extended, those springs are going to wear out. This one gives me the easiest mechanism for swapping out that spring, and Shield Arms on their webpage has additional springs that you can buy for a few bucks for these extensions. It's not a bad deal, guys, and I like that part quite a bit. So that's the Shield Arms. The Strike Industries. Guys, I bought this one from Midway. It kind of falls in that Never Never land of it's not the best, not the worst. I had no problems with it. The retention device that holds it on instead of a post, which most of the others are using, is actually a full plate that sits at the back. And it uses a little Allen wrench that goes in there, or an Allen screw. That Allen screw is angled, so it's super easy to screw in, unlike some of the other posts where you've got to do some goofy stuff to get the Allen key kind of even with the magazine. Good little device. Guys, looks like that in the gun. Most of these are going to look the same, but you know, it doesn't hang out too bad. It's definitely a decent +5 item, and it's in the same price range as all the others, so I don't hate it, and they're almost always available. I've never seen these out of stock. So overall, the Strike Industries, not a bad option. Taran Tactical. Taran Tactical was probably the first aftermarket magazine extension that wasn't made by Glock. They've been around a long time. If you look at this magazine, you can see this is one of the black follower magazines. because I've had this thing forever. Relatively easy to install. The post at the back is not threaded at all. It's actually just a smooth pin that is retained by another screw. So in some ways it may be slightly more mechanically complicated, but I've never seen this create any issues. And at this point, guys, I've dropped this thing so many times, with rounds, without rounds. It stays together, it keeps going. So one of the OGs on the magazine extension market, Taran Tactical. Taran's a brilliant shooter. If I give this any downside, it's the Taran Tactical Hefner factor, which you may or may not find unctuous. That's up to you, but it's a consideration for some. It kind of lends me pause when I think about buying more product from Taran Tactical. Like I said, maybe you don't care, your mileage may vary, but that's my general thoughts on the Taran Tactical. It looks like this in the gun. So nice and smooth, but if I give it another downside, there's no real grip factor here if I need to rip this out, unlike some of the others. Even the Milspin, which is smoother than the rest, still has a little bit of a shelf at the bottom to give me some purchase on the magazine. The Taran Tactical really kind of mirrors the Glock OEM in that it's just a smooth little box that goes on the bottom. So maybe a plus, maybe a minus, maybe you don't care. Have you guessed which one's my favorite? Have you figured it out? You probably did, not a big shock. The shield arms. Because of the integral base plate inside of the extension, it's super easy to work with and work on. It is more mechanically complicated, right? You're talking about the sleeve, the plate, the retention pin for the sleeve, and the retention pin for that base plate. Is that 4 parts, and that's not counting the spring. So mechanically, it's more complicated. That didn't seem to cause me any issues. I dropped this thing a lot. I beat on it. I don't know if you can see any of the scuffs, but it still looks really nice and new despite getting kicked around and beat up. And being able to swap springs for me is super important, guys. I shoot a lot. I don't really want to talk about the number of rounds that go down range every year out of my pistols, but it's a substantive amount. Sooner or later, all those springs get worn out. Some of my original magazines that I've been shooting for my Glock 17 and my Glock 45, I had to respring all these. They were just getting too soggy. Some of the time they weren't locking the slide to the rear on my last round, and I figured it was only a short matter of time to go from there to Malfunctionville, so those required a magazine replacement. At some point, all of these extension ones, if I'm still using them, are going to go that route too. This makes it super easy to replace. Guys, I'm probably going to end up putting a couple of these on my actual carry magazines, like the magazines that I walk around with and bet my life on. I'm probably going to add these. So instead of having 17 and 17 rounds, I'm going to have 22 and 22 rounds. Now, I don't think I'm going to be able to get away with this concealed carry. You're probably not going to see this on my Glock 19, but you're sure as heck going to see it on my 17 and my 45, guys. I like it that much. Aside from that one magazine that kept coming apart on me, all of these extensions work, guys. Every single one of them is good to go. If you have a favorite that is different than my favorite, but it's one of the ones that I've kind of given the thumbs up to, it's not like I can tell you you made a bad choice. Even the agency one, for its warts, if I had only dropped it empty and never dropped it with a partial or full load, we'd probably have never discovered the explosivo factor. These are probably okay too. And maybe mine's just a bum deal, or maybe my magazine's a little out of spec. I don't know, guys. I don't want to beat up on agency. I like their other product a lot. I like their guns. I like their AOS, which is on one of my other guns. They're good guys. When I sent this back, they contacted me immediately. They even sent me a video where they videoed themselves putting it back together and explaining it. So they didn't have to do that. They really went out of their way to help me out. Please don't take this as a slight on agency. Of all their products, I think I like their magazine extensions the least. Like I said, guys, my favorite, shield arms one. I like it quite a bit, and that's probably my jam. Take it easy, guys. Stay safe, and I'll talk to you soon.
Get 'em, Jay.